everyone, this is Darcinovia here. I am back once again. This time, I'm doing a review on Sin Loyalty and Savage Heart. Now, both of these stories I think are fantastic, in my opinion. But why are they fantastic? Sin Loyalty takes place, a little bit before the Battle of Yavin and during the Battle of Yavin, but it's through the perspective of a stormtrooper. Now, these are the kind of stories I enjoy, reading about. And in fact, even though Allegiance isn't that good of a novel, to be honest with you, that's one of the reasons I enjoyed Allegiance when I first read it, before I listened to the audiobook, because it's very rare we get to read about stormtroopers. What's in their head? Why are they fighting for the Empire? What is about the Empire that's so appealing to them? Why are they fighting for it? Well, this is a story where we get in the head of one of those stormtroopers that's extremely loyal to the Empire and his, superior officer in particular. And from beginning to end, I think this comic tells a really good story. And the price of blind loyalty and where it can eventually lead. I mean, artwork is something that's subjective, but I think this particular panel here, I think is really good. The way the characters are drawn, how it goes from panel to panel. I it the art has a lot of character in this comic. The stormtrooper, doesn't look, the proportion isn't it's ridiculous like it is in some other comics I've talked about. And the story is really good despite it being really short. And it ends, well, I know I'm just going to spoil it, but spoiler alert. It ends with the destruction of the Death Star, but it's all from the perspective of a stormtrooper. The male stormtrooper. Now, this comic isn't a comic that can be read on its own, just like the comic I talked about last time. But you don't have to read anything in this series to read this, and maybe that might be what's one of the things that's a problem at first. Because one thing I'm starting to notice about this comic, this is not a bad thing, but you can jump almost at any point, in this comic, as long as you don't start in the middle of a series and not be lost. That's not a bad thing. Now, I do appreciate, this particular comic, focusing on, other characters, because here's the thing. I don't mind if the Rebellion era focuses on characters that aren't in the movies. That is what interests me. And maybe some occasional Darth Vader, which is the next comic I'm about to talk about. The Savage Heart. This particular comic, what wanted me to read this comic is, I forgot this YouTuber's name. He talked about, Darth Vader feeling joy for the first time, in 2 decades. And this particular premise of this comic is great. There isn't that much dialogue in this comic, but the beautiful illustrations in this particular issue is the best of the entire Empire series so far. I mean, every single, panel in this comic, is gorgeous. This is a Darth Vader story through and through. There's no denying that. And, of course, you have a B plot with a bunch of incompetent Imperial officers that don't take their job seriously. One of them is reluctant to, follow suit with his friends. And, of course, this is another example of excellent artwork. One of the best comics, in my opinion, in the whole expanded universe in terms of art. The art basically does everything to tell the story. Now, why am I so fixated on this art? Because the art tells the story through the visuals. You could remove all the words from the Darth Vader portions, and it tells you everything that you need to know. And I think that is what makes a comic good, is the visuals. And even though it's a very short story, you probably could get through it probably in 5 minutes, considering how much dialogue there is in this particular comic. It's still a story I think worth reading, especially if you're interested in reading, stuff that takes place post Battle of Yavin. And it's one of those issues you could jump straight there and not read anything else in Empire. In this whole series so far, other than the Biggs story arc, this is probably my favorite comic of this entire series so far. The artwork is great. The story is great. And the way those stupid officers who are goofing around, them not taking their job seriously is what gets them killed by the wild beast that Vader befriends. Yeah, they literally get eaten alive by these things. It shows, that the good in Anakin, at least as in Vader, isn't gone, and there's signs of it even in this particular, comic story. And it does show a side of Vader that's not shown that much. This was back before Marvel just oversaturated, Star Wars comics with like endless amounts of Darth Vader stories. I mean, how many comics do they have now? Almost 100. I have nothing against those who actually like those comics, but I'm just think that Darth Vader is one of those particular characters that should be used sparingly. Yeah. In case you haven't noticed, why this review is longer primarily because of this Vader comic. Due to an error I made, I did not want to re-record the other Signal issues that I've done, so I combined this into another review. So if you're wondering why the sudden, extension of this review, that is why. Because I am not going to do a separate video on a Signal issue, and nor am I going to re-record a video that I think went rather well. So I'm going to talk about Bravery being out of range. It's issue 23 of Star Wars Empire, and it focuses on a background character from A New Hope. If you guys read the expanded universe, these all the short stories and the journals, in depth, you will know who this character is. Now, it's a fun little story. I mean, it is a short story after all. I don't think it's as good as the other stories that I've reviewed, but I think it's fun. The art is pretty good, like it always is, and I think it had a potential for a good follow-up, honestly, but they never followed up on it, as far as I know. So yeah, I think the story is okay. I think there's better stories out there. Anyway, sorry for the jarring, video. Have a good day, everyone. May the Force be with us all. Later.